The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Maya rolled over and slammed her hand down on the snooze button, but she knew there was no point in trying to sleep more. Her shift at Bellecourt restaurant started at 7 a.m., and she needed every minute to get ready. She dragged herself out of her tiny studio apartment and looked in the mirror. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of another late night spent worrying about bills. The rent was due in 5 days, and she was still short by $200. Again. Maya grabbed her black work uniform from the chair where she'd thrown it the night before. The fabric was getting thin from too many washes, and there was a small stain near the pocket that never seemed to come out completely. She tied her hair back in a neat bun and applied just enough makeup to look professional. The subway ride to downtown took 45 minutes. Maya used this time to practice what she called her customer smile, that bright, cheerful expression that made people tip better. She had learned that customers didn't want to see her real feelings. They wanted someone happy and energetic, even if she was running on 4 hours of sleep. Bellecourt restaurant sat on the corner of 5th Avenue, its windows gleaming in the morning sun. The place screamed money from every corner. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and the tables were set with real silver and cloth napkins. In the far corner of the main dining room sat a beautiful black grand piano that probably cost more than Maya made in 2 years. She had asked about the piano during her first week. The manager, Mr. Rodriguez, told her it was just for decoration. "Looks fancy," he had said with a shrug. "The owner thinks it makes the place look more sophisticated." Maya tried not to look at the piano too much. It hurt in a way she couldn't quite explain. She had studied piano for 12 years. Started when she was 6, practiced every day after school, and even got a scholarship to study music at the community college. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, used to say she had magic fingers and that music flowed through her like water, through a stream. But life had other plans. Her father got sick during her second year of college, cancer. The medical bills started piling up, and someone had to work to keep the family afloat. Maya dropped out and got her first waitressing job at a small diner near the hospital. She told herself it was temporary, just until her dad got better. He never did. After the funeral, Maya found herself alone with a mountain of debt and no college degree. The piano lessons stopped. The practice stopped. The dreams of performing in concert halls slowly faded away like old photographs. Now, 3 years later, she was still carrying trays and forcing smiles. Her hands, which once danced across piano keys creating beautiful music, now carried plates of expensive food to people who barely noticed she existed. The morning prep work at Bellecourt was always the same. Fill salt shakers, polish silverware, memorize the daily specials. Maya had the routine down to a science. She could fold napkins and set tables while her mind wandered to other places. Sometimes she caught herself humming old pieces she used to play. Chopin nocturnes, Bach inventions, Debussy preludes. The melodies lived in her memory like old friends she hadn't seen in years. Maya, table 12 needs more bread, called Jenny, another waitress who had been working there for 5 years. Jenny was in her 40s and had 2 kids at home. She often worked double shifts just like Maya. "Got it," Maya replied, grabbing a basket of warm rolls from the kitchen. The lunch rush was brutal. Business executives in expensive suits ordered wine that cost more than Maya's weekly grocery budget. They talked loudly about deals and investments while she refilled their water glasses and cleared their plates. One man at table 7 was particularly difficult. He complained that his steak was too rare, then too well done when the kitchen cooked it again. He snapped his fingers to get Maya's attention and left a 5% tip on a $200 bill. Maya counted her tips at the end of her shift. $68. Not bad for a Tuesday, but still not enough to make up the difference for rent. She had learned to budget down to the penny. $20 for groceries this week, $15 for the subway card. The rest would go toward rent, but it still wouldn't be enough. Walking home that evening, Maya passed a music store. She stopped and looked through the window at the keyboards and sheet music on display. A young girl inside was trying out a small digital piano with her mother. The girl's face lit up as she played a simple melody, and her mother smiled proudly. Maya remembered that feeling. The joy of making music, of creating something beautiful with just her fingers and a keyboard. It felt like a lifetime ago. Back in her apartment, Maya heated up leftover soup for dinner and sat at her small table. She pulled out a calculator and went through her bills again. hoping somehow the numbers would magically change. Rent, $800 due in 5 days. She had $600 electric, $95 due next week. Phone, $45. Groceries, whatever was left, which wasn't much. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she had stayed in school, if her father hadn't gotten sick, if she had been brave enough to chase her dreams instead of playing it safe, but dwelling on what-ifs didn't pay the bills. Maya set her alarm for 5:30 a.m. again and climbed into bed. Tomorrow would be another day of smiling at customers, carrying heavy trays and pretending everything was fine. Another day of walking past that beautiful piano in the corner of Bellecourt restaurant and trying not to remember what it felt like to make music. She closed her eyes and hummed a lullaby. Her father used to sing to her when she was little. It was the only music she allowed herself these days, and only when no one else could hear. Outside her window, the city never slept. Cars honked, sirens wailed, and people hurried past on the sidewalk below. But inside her small apartment, Maya drifted off to sleep, dreaming of piano keys and concert halls she thought she'd never see again. Friday evening at Bellecourt restaurant was always chaos. The weekend crowd brought bigger parties, higher bills, and hopefully better tips. Maya had worked 6 days straight this week, picking up extra shifts to try to catch up on her rent. She was refilling bread baskets when the hostess, Angela, rushed over with a worried look on her face. I need you to take table 15. It's a VIP reservation, and Mr. Rodriguez specifically asked for our best server. Maya glanced across the dining room at table 15. It was the corner table with the best view of the city skyline, reserved for only the most important guests. 3 men in expensive suits sat there, and even from across the room she could tell they were different from the usual customers. One man stood out from the others. He was younger, maybe in his 30s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. While his companions checked their phones and looked around impatiently, he sat calmly, watching people in the restaurant with genuine interest. Maya straightened her uniform and walked over with menus and water glasses. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached. VIP tables meant the possibility of great tips, but also the pressure of perfect service. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Bellecourt. My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. The 2 older men barely looked up from their phones, but the younger man smiled warmly and made eye contact. Thank you. Maya, I'm David. These are my colleagues, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Williams. We're celebrating the closing of a business deal tonight. Congratulations, Maya said, meaning it. Would you like to start with something to drink? Mr. Thompson, a heavy-set man with gray hair, spoke without looking up. Bring us your most expensive bottle of champagne, and make it quick. We have places to be. David shot his colleague a disapproving look. What my friend means is we'd love some champagne recommendations. What would you suggest? Maya appreciated his politeness. She had dealt with enough rude customers to recognize kindness when she saw it. She recommended a bottle that was expensive but not ridiculously overpriced, and David nodded approvingly. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself drawn to table 15 more than usual. David asked about her day, remembered her name, and thanked her for every small service. When she refilled his water glass, he asked about the beautiful piano in the corner. It's gorgeous, he said, looking at the instrument. Does anyone ever play it? Maya felt her heart skip a beat. No, sir. It's just for decoration. That's a shame. A piano like that should be making music, not just looking pretty. Something in his voice made Maya look at him more carefully. There was a sadness there, like he understood what it meant for beautiful things to go unused. The trouble started when Maya was serving their main course. She was carrying a tray with 3 plates of the restaurant's signature pasta dish. When Mr. Thompson suddenly pushed back his chair without warning, Maya tried to sidestep him, but there wasn't enough room. The tray tilted, and one of the water glasses on a nearby table crashed to the floor, shattering into pieces. Water splashed across the white tablecloth and onto Mr. Thompson's expensive shoes. Are you kidding me? Mr. Thompson shouted, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Do you have any idea how much these shoes cost? Maya's face burned with embarrassment. Every eye in the restaurant turned toward their table. She could see Mr. Rodriguez heading over with an angry expression. I'm so sorry, Maya said, her voice shaking. It was completely my fault. Let me clean this up right away. She knelt down and started picking up pieces of broken glass with shaking hands. Her mind raced through the consequences. VIP guests complaining meant potential loss of her job. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Not now, but before she could gather all the glass, David was kneeling beside her. "Careful," he said gently. "Let me help you." "Sir, you really don't need to—" "It's okay," David said, his voice calm and reassuring. "Accidents happen." Mr. Thompson was still fuming. "This is exactly why I prefer to eat at my club. The service there is actually professional." David stood up and faced his colleague. "Tom, sit down. It was an accident. Maya is doing a great job." The firmness in David's voice surprised everyone, including Maya. Mr. Thompson looked like he wanted to argue, but something in David's expression made him think better of it. Mr. Rodriguez appeared at the table, his face tight with worry. "Gentlemen, I apologize profusely for this incident. Maya, please step aside." "I'll handle this," but David held up a hand. "Actually, everything is fine here. Maya handled it perfectly. Could we just get some fresh napkins?" Maya looked up at him in amazement. In 3 years of waitressing, no customer had ever defended her like that. As the evening continued, Maya found herself paying more attention to David. He asked thoughtful questions about the food, complimented the restaurant's atmosphere, and treated every staff member with respect. When other customers were rude to the busboy, David made a point of thanking the young man personally. During a quiet moment, David motioned Maya over to the table. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Earlier, when I mentioned the piano, you got this look in your eyes. Do you play?" Maya hesitated. She rarely talked about her musical background with customers. It felt too personal, too painful. "I used to," she said quietly. "A long time ago." "What did you play?" "Classical mostly, some jazz. I studied for 12 years. David's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "That's incredible. What made you stop?" The question hit Maya like a punch to the stomach. She felt tears threatening to form in her eyes. "Life," she said simply. "Life got in the way." David nodded like he understood exactly what she meant. "I'm sorry. That must have been really hard." Maya was surprised by the emotion in his voice. Most people, when they learned about her musical background, either ignored it or made some comment about how she should get back to it, as if it were that simple. "It was," she admitted. "But everyone has to grow up sometime, right?" "Do they?" David asked. "I mean, do we really have to give up the things that make us who we are?" Before Maya could answer, Mr. Thompson interrupted loudly, complaining about the temperature of his coffee. The moment was broken, but something had shifted. David continued to watch her throughout the rest of the evening, and Maya found herself wondering who this man really was. When it came time for the check, David insisted on paying for the entire table. The bill came to over $400. Maya tried not to think about how that was more than half her monthly rent. As the 3 men prepared to leave, David hung back while his colleagues walked toward the exit. "Maya," he said quietly, "I know this might sound strange, but would you consider playing something on that piano?" "Just one song?" Maya's heart stopped. "I couldn't. I'm working and I haven't played in years, and what if I talked to your manager? What if I covered any tips you might lose by taking a few minutes?" "Why?" Maya asked, genuinely confused. "Why would you want me to play?" David smiled, and for a moment he looked almost sad. "Because that piano deserves to make music, and I have a feeling you do too." Maya stared at David in complete shock. "Play the piano? Here, now?" The idea seemed impossible, terrifying, and somehow wonderful all at the same time. "I really can't," she whispered, glancing around the busy restaurant. "I'm in the middle of my shift and I haven't touched a piano in 3 years. I wouldn't even know what to play." David's colleagues had stopped near the entrance and were looking back impatiently. Mr. Thompson tapped his expensive watch and called out, "David, we have that conference call in an hour." "Give me just a few minutes," David called back, then turned his attention back to Maya. "What if I spoke to your manager? What if this wasn't about you taking time off work, but about providing entertainment for the guests?" Maya felt her palms getting sweaty. The thought of sitting at that beautiful piano filled her with equal parts longing and terror. What if she had forgotten how to play? What if her fingers stumbled over keys that once felt like extensions of her own body? "Sir, I appreciate the offer, but—" "David," he corrected gently. "And I understand if you're not comfortable. I just thought, well, It seems like a waste for such a beautiful instrument to never make music. Before Maya could respond, Mr. Rodriguez appeared at their table. He had been watching the conversation from across the room and looked concerned. "Is everything all right here? Maya, don't you have other tables to attend to?" David turned to the manager with that same easy confidence he had shown all evening. "Actually, I was hoping to make a special request. I'd like to hire Maya to provide some piano entertainment for the restaurant. Just for a few minutes." Mr. Rodriguez blinked in surprise. "Piano entertainment? But Maya is a waitress. We don't have piano entertainment here." "I understand that," David said smoothly, "but I'm willing to pay for the privilege. Let's say $500 for 10 minutes of music." Maya gasped. $500? That was more than she made in a week of tips. That would cover her rent shortage and then some. Mr. Rodriguez's eyes widened. He was a businessman, and $500 for 10 minutes was an offer no restaurant manager would refuse. "Well, I suppose if it's just for a few minutes, and if Maya is comfortable with it." All eyes turned to Maya. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a cliff, and everyone was waiting to see if she would jump. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. "I don't know if I remember how," she said quietly. David smiled. "It's like riding a bicycle. Some things you never really forget." Maya looked at the piano in the corner. It sat there like an old friend waiting. She had walked past it every day for 3 years, pretending it didn't matter, pretending she didn't miss the feeling of keys beneath her fingers. "What would I play?" she asked, surprised to hear herself considering it. "Whatever feels right," David said. "Whatever speaks to you." Maya took a deep breath. Around the restaurant, other diners had started to notice the conversation. She could see Jenny and the other waitresses watching curiously from the service station. "If I do this," Maya said slowly, "and I mess up badly, you won't ask for your money back?" David laughed. "I promise. No refunds no matter what happens." Mr. Rodriguez was practically bouncing on his feet. $500 was more than they usually made in piano rental fees for an entire month, and they weren't even using the piano. "Maya, I think this is a wonderful opportunity," he said encouragingly. "Take all the time you need." Maya felt like she was in a dream. This morning she had woken up worried about rent money, and now a complete stranger was offering to pay her more than she made in a week just to play piano for 10 minutes. "Okay," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll try." The word seemed to hang in the air. David smiled broadly, and even Mr. Rodriguez looked excited. Maya untied her apron with shaking hands and set it on a nearby chair. Walking across the restaurant to the piano felt like walking through water. Every step seemed to take forever, and she was acutely aware of people beginning to watch her. Conversations grew quieter as diners noticed something unusual was happening. The piano bench was exactly the right height. Maya lifted the lid and stared at the keys. 88 black and white keys, the same as every piano she had ever played. But these keys were perfect, polished to a shine, and she could tell just by looking that this was an expensive instrument. She sat down and placed her hands in her lap. The restaurant hadn't gone completely quiet, but she could feel attention focusing on her. David had taken a seat at a nearby table, watching with encouraging eyes. Maya's mind raced through possibilities. What should she play? Something simple and safe? Something impressive? Something that meant something to her personally? Her hands hovered over the keys. She could feel the familiar stretch in her fingers as muscle memory began to take over. It had been 3 years, but her hands still remembered the position, the curve of her wrists, the gentle arch of her fingers. She pressed middle C, and the note rang out clear and true. The sound sent a shiver through her entire body. It was like hearing the voice of an old friend. Maya closed her eyes and let her fingers find their way to a chord progression she had known since childhood. Not any particular piece, just a series of chords that felt like coming home. The restaurant grew quieter. Even the kitchen staff had stopped clattering dishes to listen. Maya made her decision. She would play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Opus 9, No. 2. It was a piece she had performed in her final college recital, a piece that had once made her professor cry. It was beautiful, emotional, and not too technically demanding. If she was going to play in public for the first time in 3 years, this felt right. She took a deep breath and began. The opening melody flowed from her fingers like water. Soft, gentle, full of long, Maya felt tears prick at her eyes as the music filled the space around her. It was like speaking a language she had forgotten she knew. Her left hand provided the steady accompaniment while her right hand sang the melody. The piano responded beautifully to her touch, each note clear and resonant. Around the restaurant, conversation stopped entirely. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Servers stood still in the aisles. Even Mr. Thompson and Mr. Williams, who had been checking their phones by the entrance, looked up in surprise. Maya was no longer thinking about the audience, about her rent, about her fears. She was lost in the music, in the feeling of creating something beautiful with nothing but her fingers and a keyboard. Every emotion she had suppressed for 3 years poured through her hands and into the piano. The piece built in intensity, the melody becoming more elaborate, more passionate. Maya's fingers danced across the keys with growing confidence. It was all coming back to her. The timing, the phrasing, the way to make each note speak. As she played, Maya felt like she was remembering who she used to be. Not just the girl who played piano, but the girl who believed in beautiful things, who thought art mattered, who had dreams bigger than just paying rent. The nocturne reached its climactic moment, where the melody soars above everything else, pure and heartbreaking. Maya played it with all the emotion of 3 years of suppressed dreams. 3 years of walking past this piano and pretending it didn't matter. And then, slowly, gently, the piece began to wind down. The melody returned to its opening theme, but now it felt different. Not sad, but hopeful. Like a question that had finally found its answer. Maya played the final notes with infinite tenderness. The last chord hung in the air, fading slowly in the perfect acoustics of the restaurant. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the applause began. The silence that followed Maya's final note seemed to stretch on forever. She sat at the piano bench, her hands still hovering over the keys, afraid to move or breathe or break whatever spell had fallen over the restaurant. Then someone started clapping. It began with David, who was sitting closest to the piano. His applause was slow and deliberate, filled with genuine appreciation. Then the elderly woman at table 3 joined in, her weathered hands creating sharp, precise claps. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in applause. Maya turned around slowly, hardly able to believe what she was seeing. Every person in Bellecourt restaurant was clapping for her. The business executives who usually barely acknowledged her existence were on their feet. The kitchen staff had come out from behind the swinging doors, their chefs' hats and aprons making them look like a choir of angels. Even Mr. Thompson, who had been so rude earlier, was clapping with enthusiasm, his face showing something that might have been amazement. Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks. She hadn't realized she was crying until she tasted salt on her lips. The applause continued, growing louder rather than fading. Someone in the back of the restaurant actually shouted, "Bravo!" She stood up from the piano bench on shaking legs, not sure what to do with her hands or where to look. The attention felt overwhelming and wonderful at the same time. For 3 years she had been invisible in this restaurant. Now suddenly, everyone was seeing her. David was the first to approach the piano. His eyes were bright with emotion, and Maya realized he was fighting back tears too. "That was extraordinary," he said, his voice thick with feeling. "Absolutely extraordinary." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I can't believe I just did that. I haven't played in front of people since college." "You couldn't tell," David said. "That was the performance of someone who was born to make music." Mr. Rodriguez appeared beside them, his face flushed with excitement. "Maya, I had no idea you could play like that. In all the time you've worked here, you never mentioned, you never asked," Maya said simply but without bitterness. She was beginning to realize that maybe she hadn't given people the chance to ask. Maybe she had been so busy hiding her musical past that she had made it invisible. The applause was finally beginning to die down, but people weren't returning to their meals. Instead, they were approaching the piano area, wanting to talk to Maya personally. An elderly gentleman in an expensive suit shook her hand warmly. "My dear, that was absolutely beautiful. I haven't heard Chopin played with such emotion in years." "Are you a professional musician?" Maya felt her cheeks redden. "No, sir. I'm a waitress here." "Well, you shouldn't be," the man said firmly. "Talent like that needs to be shared with the world." A young couple from table 8 came over next. The woman's eyes were still glistening with tears. "That piece," she said, "it was the song we danced to at our wedding. Hearing you play it just now, it brought back every beautiful memory. Maya felt her heart swell. This was why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Not for the technical perfection or the applause, but for the way music could touch people's hearts, connect them to their deepest emotions and memories. More people approached. A businessman who admitted he usually spent dinner checking email said the music had made him put his phone away and actually appreciate the moment. A mother dining with her teenage daughter said it was the first time in months they had sat together without arguing. Jenny, the other waitress, came over with tears in her eyes. "Maya, honey, I've worked with you for 2 years and I had no idea you could do something like that. That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Even the busboy, a quiet young man named Carlos who barely spoke English, approached with a shy smile. "Very beautiful," he said in careful English. "Made me think of my grandmother's music box from Mexico." Maya realized that in 10 minutes of playing piano, she had connected with more people than in 3 years of serving them food. Music had a power she had forgotten about, the ability to break down walls and touch the human heart directly. David had been standing quietly nearby, watching the interactions with a satisfied smile. When the crowd began to thin out and people returned to their tables, he approached Maya again. "I have a confession to make," he said quietly. "I didn't choose to eat here tonight by accident." Maya looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" "I've been coming to this restaurant occasionally for about 6 months, David explained. "I always noticed you, always noticed how you looked at that piano. Tonight, I finally worked up the courage to ask you about it. You've been planning this?" David smiled somewhat sheepishly. "Not exactly planning. More like hoping for the right moment. I could tell you had a story with music, and I've learned to trust those instincts." "Who are you?" Maya asked, suddenly realizing she knew almost nothing about this man who had just changed her evening, possibly her life. "I'm David Chen," he said. "I run a foundation that supports artists and musicians. We help people who have extraordinary talent but need opportunities to share it with the world." Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. "A foundation?" "We work with concert halls, recording studios, music schools. We find artists who deserve bigger platforms and help them get there." The restaurant was beginning to return to normal around them, but Maya felt like her world had tilted on its axis. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that what I heard tonight was the most emotionally powerful performance I've experienced in years. And I've heard some of the best musicians in the world." Maya sat down heavily on the piano bench. "This is a lot to process." David sat on a nearby chair, giving her space. "I'm sure it is. Can I ask what happened? Why did you stop playing professionally?" Maya found herself telling him about her father's illness, about dropping out of school, about the debt and the years of just trying to survive. David listened without interrupting, his face showing genuine compassion for her story. "And you've been carrying trays instead of making music for 3 years, he said when she finished. "It paid the bills," Maya said with a shrug that didn't quite hide the pain. "Maya," David said gently, "what if I told you it didn't have to be either or? What if I told you there was a way to make music and pay the bills?" Maya looked at him carefully. "What are you suggesting?" David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "I'm suggesting that you give me a call next week. Let's talk about what it would look like for you to start performing again. Real performances at real venues for real money." Maya took the card with trembling hands. It was elegant, simple. David Chen, Chen Foundation for the Arts, with a phone number and email address. "I don't understand," she said. "You heard me play for 10 minutes. You don't know anything about my training or my background or—" "I know what I heard," David interrupted gently. "And what I heard was someone who doesn't just play music, but someone who understands what music is supposed to do. Someone who can take notes on a page and turn them into pure emotion." Maya stared at the business card. Part of her wanted to dismiss this as too good to be true, but the sincerity in David's voice was unmistakable. "Think about it," David said, standing up. "But don't think too long. The world needs to hear you play." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Maya? Keep the $500. You earned every penny of it." As David rejoined his colleagues and left the restaurant, Maya sat alone at the piano, holding his business card and trying to process everything that had just happened. In the space of 20 minutes, she had gone from being an invisible waitress to being offered a chance to return to the world of music. The piano keys gleamed under the restaurant lights, no longer looking like a painful reminder of what she had lost, but like a doorway to what she might regain. Maya stared at David's business card for 3 whole days before she found the courage to call the number. She had carried it in her apron pocket during every shift, pulling it out during quiet moments to make sure it was real, that the whole evening hadn't been some impossible dream. The $500 sat in her checking account like a small miracle. For the first time in months, she could pay her rent without stress and even buy groceries without counting every penny. But more important than the money was the feeling that had stayed with her since Friday night. The memory of what it felt like to make music again. On Tuesday morning, during her break between the breakfast and lunch shifts, Maya finally dialed the number. Chen Foundation. "This is David speaking." Maya's heart jumped. She had expected a receptionist, not David himself. Hi, this is Maya. From Bellecourt Restaurant? You asked me to call Maya." David's voice was warm with genuine pleasure. "I was hoping you'd call. How are you feeling after Friday night?" "Honestly?" Confused, excited, terrified all at the same time. David chuckled. "That sounds about right. Those are exactly the emotions you should be feeling when you're about to make a big change. Can you meet me this afternoon? I'd like to show you something." 2 hours later, Maya found herself standing outside the Steinway Concert Hall in downtown Manhattan. It was a beautiful old building with elegant architecture and posters advertising upcoming performances by world-famous musicians. David met her at the entrance, dressed more casually than he had been at the restaurant, but still looking professional and confident. "Welcome to one of the most beautiful concert halls in the city," he said as he led her through the ornate lobby. "The Chen Foundation has a partnership here. We sponsor young artists and provide them with performance opportunities." Maya looked around in wonder. The lobby was filled with photographs of famous musicians, and the walls seemed to echo with decades of beautiful music. "David," she said hesitantly, "I need to be honest with you. I haven't performed anywhere except my college recital hall. This feels way too big for someone like me." "Let me show you something," David said, leading her through a side door into the main concert hall. Maya gasped. The hall was breathtaking, with perfect acoustics and hundreds of red velvet seats rising in elegant tiers. But what caught her attention was the stage, where a magnificent concert grand piano sat waiting. "Every musician who has ever performed here started somewhere," David said. "The question isn't whether you're ready for this hall right now. The question is whether you're willing to work toward being ready." They walked down the aisle toward the stage. Maya felt small in the vast space, but also strangely at home. "What exactly are you offering me?" she asked. David stopped walking and turned to face her. 6 months of intensive coaching with some of the best piano teachers in the city. Performance opportunities at smaller venues to build your confidence and repertoire. A modest monthly stipend so you can reduce your hours at the restaurant and focus on music. And if everything goes well, a debut performance here in this hall. Maya felt dizzy. It sounded like a dream. The kind of opportunity she had given up hoping for years ago. "Why me?" she asked. "You must know dozens of musicians who are more qualified, more experienced." "Because," David said, "most of the qualified, experienced musicians I know play technically perfect music that leaves me completely cold. What you played Friday night had something that can't be taught. You have the rare ability to make people feel something." They climbed the steps to the stage, and Maya approached the concert grand piano with reverence. It was easily the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. "Can I?" she asked, gesturing toward the bench. "Please." Maya sat down and played a few scales just to feel the touch of the keys. The piano responded like a living thing, every note crisp and resonant in the perfect acoustics of the hall. Without really planning to, she began playing the same Chopin nocturne she had performed at the restaurant. But in this space, with this instrument, the music seemed to take on new dimensions. Every note hung in the air like a jewel, and the melody seemed to float up to the highest balcony. When she finished, David applauded softly from the orchestra seats where he had taken a seat to listen. "Maya," he called out, "that's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't just play the notes. You tell a story." Maya felt tears forming in her eyes again. "I can't believe this is really happening." David walked back up to the stage. "It's happening because you're talented, because you're brave enough to take a chance, and because the world needs what you have to offer. What if I'm not good enough? What if I've been away from music too long?" "Those are fair concerns," David said. "That's why we start slowly. Small venues, supportive audiences, excellent teachers. We build your confidence step by step. Maya looked out at the empty concert hall, trying to imagine it filled with people who had come specifically to hear her play. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. "There's something else," David said quietly. "I haven't told you why I started this foundation." Maya turned to look at him, hearing something new in his voice. "My daughter was a pianist," David continued. "An extraordinary musician. She died in a car accident when she was 22, just as her career was beginning to take off." Maya felt her heart constrict. "David, I'm so sorry. She used to say that music was too important to be kept to yourself. That if you had the ability to touch people's hearts through music, you had a responsibility to do it." David's voice was steady, but Maya could see the emotion in his eyes. "When I heard you play Friday night, I heard the same thing in your music that I used to hear in hers. That rare combination of technical skill and emotional truth." Maya understood now why David had been so determined to get her to play, why this foundation mattered so much to him. "Her name was Lisa," David said. "She would have been 26 this year. Every artist we support through the foundation is a way of keeping her belief alive. That beautiful music should be shared, not hidden." Maya felt the weight of responsibility and honor in David's offer. This wasn't just about her dreams anymore. It was about carrying forward something precious that had been lost. "What do I need to do?" she asked. David smiled, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked truly happy. "Start by giving your notice at the restaurant. Well, maybe reduce your hours rather than quit completely, at least at first. We'll set up meetings with teachers, plan your repertoire, and schedule your first small performance." Maya thought about Mr. Rodriguez, about Jenny and Carlos and all the other people at Bellecourt who had become her second family over the past 3 years. Leaving felt scary, but staying felt impossible now that she remembered who she really was. "When would I start? How about next Monday?" Maya laughed, feeling giddy with possibility. "That soon?" "That soon. Maya, you've already waited 3 years. Don't you think it's time to stop waiting?" 6 months later, Maya stood in the wings of the Steinway Concert Hall wearing an elegant black gown and waiting for her cue to walk onto the stage. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of a sold-out audience. David appeared beside her, looking proud and nervous. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I'm about to either fulfill my destiny or embarrass myself in front of 800 people, Maya said with a shaky laugh. "For what it's worth, I think it's going to be the destiny option." Maya peeked through the curtain at the audience. In the third row, she could see Jenny and Carlos and even Mr. Rodriguez, who had not only given her a flexible schedule during her training, but had also bought a table for the entire Bellecourt staff. "Maya," David said quietly, "before you go out there, I want you to know that Lisa would have been so proud. You're proof that beautiful music finds a way to survive, even when it seems lost." Maya felt tears threatening, but these were good tears, tears of gratitude and joy. "Thank you," she said simply, "for seeing something in me that I had forgotten was there." The stage manager gave her the signal. Maya took a deep breath, walked through the curtain, and stepped into the spotlight. The applause was warm and welcoming. As she sat down at the concert grand piano and placed her hands on the keys, Maya thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a struggling waitress who had given up on her dreams to a performer about to share her music with hundreds of people, she began to play, and the music that flowed from her fingers told the story of loss and hope, of dreams deferred and dreams reclaimed. Every note carried the weight of her experience and the joy of her return to the world of music. In the audience, people closed their eyes and let the music wash over them. Some thought of their own lost dreams. Others remembered people they had loved. All of them felt the truth that David had recognized that first night at Bellecourt restaurant, that Maya didn't just play music. She used music to remind people what it felt like to be fully human. As the final notes of her performance faded into the perfect acoustics of the concert hall, Maya knew she was exactly where she belonged. The applause that followed was thunderous, but more important was the feeling in her heart, that she had found her way home.